The ENCODE portal has a feature that lets you collect an arbitrary group of datasets into one container called a cart, which you can use to visualize and download only the files in those datasets, as well as publish your cart so that others can link to it. The basic concept to ENCODE carts involves taking the entire set of datasets on the portal and manually selecting specific datasets to include in your cart. To see ENCODE carts on the portal, let's start by taking a look at a publicly listed cart, and you can find a list of them by going to the cart menu and selecting Listed Carts. You then see a listing of all carts that their owners have chosen to list publicly, a process that we'll look at in Part 3. Now let's look at a demonstration cart called My Cart. Click on its link and we go to the Shared Cart page. Let's look at the overall format of this page. You can see the title and the listing state at the top, as well as a description of the cart. Also notice this cart, as well as all carts, has a unique URL. We have tabs in the main area so we can see different aspects of the contents of this cart, and filters on the left to show specific types of items in the cart. Lastly, we have a file download button that we'll look at later in this video. Let's take a closer look at the filters. Normally, you see a dataset type filter and an analysis assembly filter. The cart page appears with the Selected Datasets tab active so that you can see all the datasets in your cart. I have both experiments and functional characterization experiments in this cart, and the dataset type filter lets me limit the datasets we can see to one or the other, or both. Now I'll turn off the Show Default Data Only checkbox so you can see all files instead of just default files. When I select GRCH38 or MM10, the dataset list doesn't change at all. That's because this filter affects files, not datasets. So I'll select the Process tab, and now you can see the files in the datasets in the cart. Now when I select GRCH38 or MM10, you can see the file list changing to show only those files matching the selected assemblies. To recap, the dataset filter affects the dataset list, while the analysis assembly filter affects the processed file list. Notice also that two file lists exist. The Processed Files tab that we've seen, and the Raw tab next to it shows the raw files. FASTQ files, for example. The dataset type and analysis assembly filters appear here as a convenience. You actually have more filters you can use. So I'll click the More Filters button to see all of them, including the same dataset type and analysis assembly filters that we've seen. Now you can see the dataset filters on the left and the file filters on the right. Notice the dataset type filter just reflects the one on the main page, as does the analysis assembly filter. Now you can select filters of either type, dataset or file, and at the top of the columns, you can see how many datasets and files your selections have left. As an added convenience, any section with a green dot shows that you selected at least one term within that filter. If you click this green dot, that clears all the selected terms within that filter. In addition, every selected filter for both datasets and files appears below the More Filters button, and clicking any of them clears that filter term. You can download all the files in the datasets of your cart, limited by the filtering you've currently selected. But notice that by default, the download button is disabled. To enable it, you need to select exactly one dataset type. Here I select Experiment, and the download button activates. But if I also select Functional Characterization Experiments, it disables itself again. So I'll just download experiment files. When I click the download button, the style log box appears that gives some instructions, and a download button. But notice you can choose what you want to download. You can download all processed files, only the raw files, or both processed and raw files. Notice these last two ignore your selected filters, while the first one honors them. make your selection, and then click the download button to download the file manifest. You get more download options if, in addition to the dataset type, you also select at least one assembly. In that case, you also get the option to download only default files, or only the files in the default analyses of your datasets. The last feature to discuss for Part 1 is the Genome Browser. You can't see any files under the Genome Browser tab right now, and one possible reason is that no visualizable files exist with the current filters. But if I go to the Process tab, you can see we have visualizable files selected, like these BigWig and BigBed files. And if I click More Filters and go to File Format, I have these visualizable file formats selected. This small icon appears next to any term that includes visualizable files. The reason you can't see any files is that I need to select exactly one assembly. Right now, you can see 66 total BigWig and BigBed files for both GRCH38 and MM10. I'll select GRCH38, and now only 16 GRCH38 BigWig and BigBed files appear. I can now see these files under the Genome Browser tab. If I also select MM10, the tracks disappear because we can only see these tracks with one assembly selected. So if I deselect MM10, the GRCH38 BigWig and BigBed files appear again. In Part 1, we've talked about basic cart concepts, viewing your carts, filtering your cart files and datasets, and downloading and visualizing your cart files. In Part 2, we'll talk about making and populating your own carts, editing your carts, and adding series datasets to carts.